As someone that talks about generative AI literally every single day, and I've spent thousands of hours talking about it and learning from Fortune 100 leaders and teaching enterprise companies how to use, ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot. To me, it feels like we're decades and decades into this generative AI wave, even though we're only a couple of years. And when you think about it and zoom out, we maybe haven't even hit the tip yet. We might still be at day zero of AI. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm very excited. So, welcome to Everyday AI, where we help you get past day zero, I guess. But we are your daily live stream podcast and free daily newsletter helping everyday people like you and me not just learn AI, but how we can all actually leverage it to grow our companies and to grow our careers. Because, yeah, development doesn't stop and neither do we. So that's why after you're done listening to this podcast, you need to go to our website at youreverydayai.com. There you can not only listen to like 500 episodes from some of the world's leading companies and leading individuals in AI, but you should also be signing up for today's daily newsletter and every day's daily newsletter that we send out, where we recap the topic that we cover on the podcast and the live stream. But then we also keep you up to date with everything else that you need to know. So make sure you go do that. All right. I am excited to talk about day zero of AI. But before we do, let's first go over some of the AI news. So first, Meta is developing its own in-house AI chips. So according to reports from Reuters, Meta is making a significant push to reduce reliance on external suppliers like NVIDIA by developing its own AI chips, a move that could reshape its infrastructure and advertising business. So according to those reports, Meta has successfully developed and begun small-scale deployment of its own in-house AI chips or GPUs, collaborating with Taiwan's TSMC for production. So these chips are already being used for inference tasks, such as tailoring content to users, and Meta plans to use them for training AI models by 2026. So the company forecasts expenses of $114 billion to $119 billion in 2025, with up to $65 billion of that allocated for capital expenditures, largely driven by AI infrastructure investments. So the move aligns Meta with a broader trend among tech giants like Amazon and Google that have also been, and Microsoft that have also been developing their own, whether it's GPUs, TPUs, or NPUs in-house to speed up AI developments. All right, next, OpenAI has introduced new tools to help developers and companies just build smarter AI agents. So OpenAI has launched the Responses API and Agents SDK, new tools designed to help developers create advanced AI agents that can handle tasks like web searches, document analysis, and computer operations. So these tools aim to make AI more accessible and customizable, enabling businesses and developers to build agents tailored to specific industries and needs, from legal research to customer support. So the Responses API allows agents to pull real-time information from the web, analyze large amounts of text, and even perform tasks on a user's computer. That's the big update here, right? A lot of these, some of these have already been available, but the computer use, essentially, OpenAI's operator, right? So now businesses and developers they can try their best to make something like operator or as good as operator, but at least now that technology is available via the API. So yeah, this is pretty big news. And I think you're going to start seeing dozens of kind of computer using AI agent type startups pop up pretty soon, probably for certain niches and verticals, as I don't think anyone's probably going to try to compete, across the broad spectrum with OpenAI. All right. So for those stories and a lot more, make sure to go sign up for that daily newsletter at youreverydayai.com. All right. Enough chit chat on the AI news. Let's talk about the big picture. And that is, we haven't started. Apparently, I mean, we haven't, right? Yeah. Like I talk about AI every day, maybe too much. But the reality is we are not even crawling, probably. All right. Enough of me chit-chatting. I'm excited to bring on our guest for today. So live stream audience, please help me welcome to the show Ron Green, the CTO of Kung Fu AI. Ron, thank you so much for joining the Everyday AI show.
Thank you for having me, Jordan.
All right. For those that don't know, what is Kung Fu AI? aside from like one of the coolest company names ever we've had on the show.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So we're a strategy and engineering firm. We're like 7+ years old. All we do is AI from day one. We help companies adopt AI strategy. We build custom AI solutions for them. Basically, anything you need to get started or build your AI roadmap or AI capabilities, we help companies with that.
Nice. So give me an example. A company comes to you. I mean, are they like, hey, we need to build off this new, this new SDK from OpenAI. We need to make agents for our company. Or they come to you with, petabytes or whatever it's called of data. And they're like, help us use AI. Like, what does it look like? And what's the end result?
Yeah, it's a little bit more the latter. We're basically solving really, really hard problems with custom AI solutions. So, people will come to us and they'll say things like, we're trying to automate trading. We want to build a system that can trade hundreds of millions of dollars automatically. Or we built a system that can predict the risk of breast cancer using just pure computer vision out to 5 years in advance at like a superhuman level. That model's actually at the FDA right now for approval, things like that.
Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, make sure to check out the newsletter if you want to know more of that. But so Ron, let's get to it. So it's your take that we're at day 0 of AI. Why is that?
It's my way of kind of waking people up and making them realize that we've barely gotten going. So I've been working in AI professionally since the 90s, and we've made enormous strides. It's unbelievable. If you compared to what we can do now to back then, we would have said, oh my God, our dreams are coming true when I was in grad school. But it's also really, really clear that the slope, the velocity, the acceleration is so great that we've essentially done nothing. We'll look back in 5 years and we'll think that the capabilities we have now are cute. In the same way we look back in 2020 with GPT-2 and we're like, that model, that's interesting that it can almost do something useful, but I'm sure there's not really going to be that much advancement. We are about to hockey stick is the point. And there's a bunch of reasons why.
Well, let's start unpacking those. So, as someone that's been in AI for 3 decades, and to say we're about to hockey stick, what causes you to believe that, right? Because obviously there's been, you mentioned GPT-2, right? I remember using GPT-3, about 5 years ago, and I was like, wow, this is pretty impressive. And, it's obviously the technology has grown exponentially since then. So why are we about to hit that hockey stick curve upward now?
There's a bunch of reasons. Let's just jump to the chase. The big reason is that traditionally we've relied on something called supervised learning, right? I think everybody probably is familiar with this. You take a model and you teach it to do something that you don't know how to teach it explicitly. So just so everybody can have an image in their head, imagine you're trying to train a model 10 years ago to recognize photos. We would not know how to do that with traditional software. We don't really know how our own brains do that. That's okay. We can take one of these big deep learning models and we can show it enough examples and generalizes. The problem with that is it's constrained by examples. You have to have a labeled example for every image. You have to know what the right answer is. And the model can generalize, but it really can't generalize beyond anything that we as humans can teach it to do, kind of mimicking this process. Well, that's changed recently. Reinforcement learning, which incidentally, some of the 2 main people behind that concept literally just won the Turing Award last week, which is like the highest honor in computer science for the work. Reinforcement learning with these new, much more capable language models have really kicked things into high gear. And we now have empirical evidence that we can elicit reasoning behavior emergently from these systems. So these systems, and technically we don't really need to go into any of the details. All that matters is we can take a strong language model, and by having it learn certain types of verifiable domains, like learning how to program and learning how to code and teaching it to think analytically, we are now, and we see multiple frontier labs have verified this over and over again. We're seeing these strong models develop reasoning capabilities emergently. And here's why that's so important. humans, as far as we can tell, are the only creatures with sort of metacognition. We can think about thinking. As soon as we have these models, which they can now introspect and think about thinking, you've got this sort of infinite recursion ability. We can think about thinking, and we can glean all of the deep insights from that. So we're really going to be off to the races. I expect, it's not an exaggeration to say we'll have AGI within a year, probably within 3 at this point. And it's all based upon this new development.
Mm. Yeah, the AGI conversation is always fun. FYI, make sure if you care about the whole AGI debate, make sure to tune in tomorrow. It's going to be a good episode, FYI. But let's get back to this concept of supervised learning, reinforcement learning, right? So for those people out there who probably, unlike you and I read all these papers all the time, right? I'm sure you do as well, Ron. But for everyone else, like, what is that actually like? What's the tangible benefit for businesses, right? When we talk about like reinforcement learning and models that can now reason and they can, introspect, right? Like, what's that tangibly mean for businesses?
It's going to be huge. I think probably everybody's heard about agentic AI. That's going to be really big. Why is that going to be big? Because we're going to have these AI models that we can give high-level assignments to, high-level tasks, and they're going to be able to go and navigate the messy world. And so, like, unlike traditional RPA, where maybe you're dealing with regular expressions and it's sort of whack-a-mole, you've got a million unending corner cases you've got to deal with. These models are literally going to be able to deal with situations that they've never seen before and reason through them in intelligent ways. So that's one way. Now, that whole agentic world is a little bit more distant than I think some people argue. I think it's going to be more of a 2026 thing than a 25 thing, only because we're still kind of working out the kinks. But there are things like research agents, like deep research from OpenAI, that are ready for prime time right now. And I use this all the time. I was using it this morning to go and analyze really, really, really complex subjects. And it came back with a multi-thousand word analysis. I read through it. I think it probably saved me 2 days worth of work. And it's sort of that high level, white collar, cognitively heavy work that we're going to see really be impacted in the short term.
Yeah, and I'll have to put that in the show notes as well. We covered deep research a couple of times, but I think one thing, like small, like aside, I don't think anyone else is talking about the fact that deep research is technically using an O3 full version, which is not out anywhere else, and it's actually using a mini version, right? It's using O3 mini as well, so it's actually like 2 different versions of O3 working together. Yeah, the research there is insane. I can't stop using the tool.
Totally.
What do you see as some of this biggest, right? So we talked about how you see this impending hockey stick of growth and, something like deep research, but is there any other, happening or development aside from the research itself, right? That you've seen recently that you're like, okay, even as someone with, 3 decades of experience, is there anything you've seen recently that has kind of shocked you in terms of AI's capabilities?
Yeah, I don't want to exaggerate. I think I'm shocked on a weekly basis right now. I mean, now some of this will be maybe less widely business applicable, but like what's happening in image generation and image synthesis and video and audio, incredible. If you haven't checked that out, I go have some fun. You can go lose a weekend on YouTube seeing what's going on there. But on a sort of a more practical level, healthcare and science generally are about to be massively disrupted. I'll give you an example that just blows my mind. So I've got a background in computational biology as well. And we used to dream in the late 90s of being able to sequence entire genomes. And we would think, well, what if we had the capability to combine like that sequencing technology with real artificial intelligence? Well, that's here today. There are, models out there like AlphaFold that have essentially solved one of the grand challenges of biology, which is, amino acid sequence to protein folding prediction. That is, this is one of the most important accomplishments in the history of science. And it's enabling amazing things like this.
Yeah. And
There
then,
is a BioML group. It's a postdoc PhD led student group at the University of Texas at Austin, and they held a hackathon about 6 months ago to develop novel proteins to fight cancer. And this was all done in one weekend, open source modeling. I think 62 countries participated in. They have 20,000 sequences. They're going to have the final results in, I think, 2 months. So things have advanced so far that 5 years ago, this was an open question whether this was even theoretically possible. And now you have hackathons on a weekend developing novel cancer therapies. I mean, it's just incredible progress.
yeah, it's it's almost wild to me to think about the disparity, right? And even as you're talking about that, one thing that was popping up in my mind is the Google co-scientists. Very, very impressive, early agentic research from Google that's going to be, I think, extremely helpful in that field. But, one thing that just always baffles my mind, Ron, is the disparity between where we're at, right? Like you gave that example of the, bio ML, but then we have even like smart companies focusing so much time on just like using large language models to write like better LinkedIn posts, right?
Yeah.
And things like that, right? Like, are you ever baffled? Or maybe it's just me, but just at the disparity between of the capabilities and then what the average human is using this technology for, or the average even enterprise business. Sometimes I'm shocked.
It blows my mind all the time. It's that old saying that the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. I think a lot of people, they take a look at something, and I guess it kind of makes sense. You take a look at something and you get a read on it and you say, okay, I understand where we're at. And that may work, back in the old days when things were moving at a slower pace. Right now, things are moving so fast. If you were an expert in AI 5 years ago and you came back to work, you wouldn't even know where to start, right? So, I would encourage everybody to have their head on a swivel here because things are moving incredibly fast. And that old adage is it's not that AI is going to beat your business. It's people, in businesses leveraging AI that are going to take your business.
Mm. I'm glad it's taking the business, right, versus taking the job. I've always like personally hated that like one-to-one comparison because I'm like, like AI is not going to take your job. Someone that uses AI will. But I'm like, what if that person using AI is using an agentic swarm, right? Like essentially OpenAI just released an SDK and an API for agentic swarms. So it's like, okay, well, that person could, in theory, maybe do the job of, I don't know, 10, 50, 100 people. Right? Can you talk even just about the capabilities and what, non-technical people or, small businesses, like, can you walk us through just what the capabilities they have? Because, I feel generally, to have that top echelon of technology has only been afforded to the 1% of companies, right? In the full Fortune 500, right? What does the everyday non-technical person in business have at their fingertips?
If I would argue that the premier sort of bleeding edge reasoning language models like Claude 3.7 or ChatGPT 4.5 with deep research, those models can be helpful to anybody. No, I don't care what your job is. If you're dealing with text or images or numbers, or you're trying to think through problems, or you're trying to understand data, those tools have a depth to them that most people, I think, they just don't know how to use or they don't know how to explore. So you don't have to go crazy. You can leverage these consumer grade reasoning models right now and get an enormous benefit. I mean, it's very difficult for me to think of a business that couldn't benefit from some aspect of that.
Mm. I'm wondering, is day zero shifting? Right? Can companies be at a negative, right? Like sometimes I'm flabbergasted, big companies reach out to me and they're like, oh, we're just now getting licenses for, Copilot, or we're looking at licenses for, ChatGPT Enterprise. And I'm like, you're a $20 billion company. Like, why are you there? Is that day zero? Is it moving? Is that a thing?
So that's a great question. I mean, honestly, I think the technology, I think AI as a technology is at day zero. There are companies who are so far behind, they're like day -1 or day -2. And I see this all the time. For example, when Copilot first came out, I know people in the AI industry that didn't believe it, thought it was BS, that it couldn't work. And I give presentations all the time, and I'll ask, big developer organizations, raise your hand if you're using Copilot. And I would say, or something like Cursor AI, some type of coding assistant. Invariably, I get a split audience. It's like half are using it and the other half think it's just not worth their time. And they have no idea what they're missing, because those tools are as powerful as the end user, right? And so if they're not getting a lot of goodness out of it, it's almost invariably their lack of understanding at what they could use with the tool, right? It's like if you gave somebody a hammer and they were like, well, I don't really see how this could be useful in my world building houses. And it just boggles the mind. And that's just coding assistance. This is going to be applied more and more everywhere. But the challenge is, I think part of the reason too, though, a lot of companies and maybe a lot of people are a little confused is they look at their mobile phone devices and, Siri is still as bad, as dumb as a bag of rocks, right? And you're like, I'm not so sure I believe this AI stuff is real. The problem is it's going to take a while for these really, really large corporations to integrate the capabilities that already exist right now. Like it may be another year or two before Siri even becomes capable of doing the things that technically it could have like 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, we've seen recent reporting say anywhere from 2026 to 2027 until we get the actual, AI, series. So we'll see. I want to follow up on this concept of coding and AI coding. Which, I know our audience isn't the most technical, but, I've, in my 2025 prediction show, I said the average person is going to be building their own applications by the end of the year. And then the Anthropic CEO just yesterday, Dario Amati, said that in 3 to 6 months, 90% of code is going to be AI. And within 12 months, it's going to be 100%. How do you see, even with non-technical people, but how is this concept of AI and coding really just going to change how business gets done? I see a lot of different avenues, but I'd love to hear from, someone that's been doing this for 3 decades.
I probably think, Dario's estimates may be a little optimistic, because any type of generative AI solution at this stage, even with reasoning models, does need some oversight, because it can lose the thread or hallucinate or make mistakes. These systems are not omniscient. Within 3 to 5 years, I think the bulk of new generated code will be AI generated and validated by humans or some other type of system. But the important point is that this is essentially taking the most powerful invention humans have ever created, which is like the ability to program general purpose computers, right? It could just, let's just set the table really quickly. General purpose computers, like, the laptop here on my desk, they're Turing complete. They can literally do anything that we can write down the instructions for, right? So they're kind of unbounded from a capability perspective. And once we're in the realm where the process of converting from our minds into computer instructions, once that step has been made as trivial as just talking to a coding assistant and using just everyday plain English, that means application development and application customization and feature additions and feature enhancements, that is going to become dramatically less expensive. And it doesn't mean that software engineers are going to go away, and certainly not in the short term. It means the amount that we can leverage and get ROI from new code development. I mean, it's almost hard to exaggerate how much that is going to change things. There's that old adage that, software is eating the world. Software is becoming embedded in every aspect of our life. We have like an operating system in our refrigerator. Well, now we have the ability to go build and modify and enhance these systems across the board with artificial intelligence, streamlining that entire process.
Another hockey analogy, right? Aside from it, growth hockey sticking upward, they always say, oh, don't, you have to skate to where the puck's going, not where it is. My thought is no one knows where the puck's going, right? If you skate where you think the puck is going,
Right.
You're going to miss the game, right? The bus has left. How can companies, not just, oh, how can they get ahead? How can they keep up? Because as someone that does this every day, I struggle, right? And I agree with you. I think that, we are going to see this hockey stick in the next couple of months. How do businesses keep up?
So I have got two pieces of advice that I typically give most businesses, because if you're an executive running a company, you have a full plate. Becoming an expert in artificial intelligence isn't really an option. So it's two things. One is, don't make the mistake that generative AI is all there is to AI. And the reason I say that is, like I mentioned a second ago, generative solutions are incredibly powerful in the right circumstance. But I see executives frequently have the false belief that they can build some generative solution and just plug it in, and they forget about how they actually use it. The fact that if you're working with Claude or ChatGPT or something, you're giving it a prompt, you're getting an answer, you're correcting it, you're having a back and forth. And generative solutions right now, without a human in the loop, just really don't work in a production environment. So if you go put a bunch of money into a generative solution, you might be disappointed if you forget that really important fact. The other component is that domain-specific AI is incredibly powerful. Now I'm talking about systems that don't have broad general capabilities, but they may have one or two or three very, very amazing superpowers, but that's all they can do, right? So you might have an AI system that can detect fraud at a superhuman level, or it can optimize product recommendations, or inventory optimization, or all these types of things. Those are really, really powerful bets where you don't have to worry about necessarily having a human in the loop. And then the last piece of advice I would give is your data, the data that you have that is proprietary to your business and that drives your business. If you can build AI solutions on top of that, then you're going to get the most ROI for a couple of reasons. One is it's a massive defense. You've got this data moat that is unique. Two, you can build capabilities to either cut costs, extend new functionality, have new predictive or perceptive capabilities based upon your own data. And that is a much, much better way to go into AI than building things or tools that are not based on your data and that could overnight become a product somebody sells, and you just wasted all this huge investment when if you just waited a year, you could buy it as a service. So focus your investments on maximizing the utility that you can get out of your own data.
And one more question as we wrap up here. If we're at day zero and if generative AI is just the start, what's next, right? I'm not asking you to look into your crystal ball and, I'll come back in 6 months and say, how dare you not be able to predict the future, Ron, right? But if generative AI is just the start, what's next?
I think the big next step, and you can have me back on the show in a bit, and we'll talk about day one. It's going to be this. It's going to be these systems have superhuman abilities that go beyond mimicking some existing human capability, whether it's our ability to see or hear or something like that. And we're pretty close to this. I think this is really best case a year, probably worst case 5, median case maybe 2.5. And what we're going to have is Just as right now, where there are reasoning models that can code at an elite level or solve math problems at an Olympic level, these models, we're going to start knocking down additional domains, and we're going to have them be able to do um, novel scientific research, novel clinical diagnostics, not just like, hey, can you automate this thing humans already do, but they're going to discover novel insights. They're going to make recommendations. They're going to be able to be introspective on their own output and reason at a level that is so sophisticated. It is literally going to have to dumb down for us the explanation so that we can understand it. And that is what I'm so excited about. And that's where we're going to be at day one, in my opinion.
Love to see it. Getting us all past day zero of AI and prepared for what's next. Ron, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join the Everyday AI Show. We really appreciate it.
This is awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, y'all, as a reminder, that was a lot. This is one of those ones, I'm already going to say it. You might want to listen to this twice. You also might want to go to our website, youreverydayai.com, sign up for the free daily newsletter. I'm going to have fun re-listening to this one myself and writing down the most important takeaways for you to leverage what we just learned to grow your company and your career. Thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you back tomorrow and every